Hello, Loftsiders. Welcome back into Loftside Banter. And on today's show, we're going to look at week one of the NFL. We're going to take a look back at the games on Thursday and Friday night. We talked about it a little bit the last time when we kind of projected some scores and stuff like that, or predicted some scores. And then we'll look at the rest of the games for this weekend. And then we'll look at kind of who we think is in a good spot and who is not in a good spot. Week one is always overreaction. So let's kind of see where this goes with that. We're obviously going to overreact just like everybody else. So let me see if I can get my microphone up here a little bit. Move this back just a tad bit. There we go. So we'll start with that. We'll do that, and then we'll hit on some other random news, if you will. And then from there, who knows? Maybe we'll just stream forever. Maybe we'll just podcast forever. Today's episode is all about the return of the NFL season. Everybody's favorite time of the year, it seems that way. The NFL season always seems to bring, and it's a year-round thing. We said this the last show. It's a year-round thing with free agency and the draft and everything else like that. There's scouting reports coming out constantly. There's news coming out constantly and everything else like that. So, with that said, week one's in the books. Some teams looked really, really good. Some teams not so good. Some surprises. And we'll get into all that. One of the things I want to mention is with this video going on right now, there's been more money spent to make sure that we can do video consistently now, which is great. Now I just got to learn how to do all of the things, put the intro in and everything else like that. There's not a ton of stuff out there for me to be able to do an intro quite yet, so I'm working on that. If anybody has any suggestions, we all know where to go. LoftsideBanter@gmail.com. That's LoftsideBantr.com at gmail.com. But first week of the NFL, we're going to start to see, I have the games up here on the screen that I know kind of that I hit every single one of them, but we'll kind of do it that way. We'll look at this. It puts the Patriots first because, well, they're the team I follow. So with that, we'll go into the Patriots and the Raiders. Actually, you know what? Before we do any of that, let's take a look at Thursday night, and we'll take a look at Friday night in a little bit more in depth. The Chiefs looked, I'll get it eventually. Thursday night's game was the Eagles and the Cowboys, and we kind of went over this on Saturday's show. But again, didn't look like any defenses showed up in the first half. Then the defenses completely showed up in the second half. The Eagles found a way to win. That is what Super Bowl champions do. I don't think the Cowboys are by any means out of it. I think they played very well, especially with a team. But, that team relies so much on its offense and so much on Dak Prescott not getting injured, in which the last few years, all he did was get injured. So it is what it is. Friday night's game was in São Paulo, as we mentioned. They opened up in Brazil, the Chiefs and the Chargers. The Chargers came out victorious in that because the Chiefs looked like they did at the end of last year. And I realize that sounds weird to say because the Chiefs were in the Super Bowl last year. And their 15 wins or whatever they had last year were all close games or closer games than what we're normally seeing with the Chiefs. They had an injury with Xavier Worthy running into Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce caught a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes, again, interesting kind of dynamic going on with this team. 11 different left tackles. Again, I went over all this before. It just seems odd that they're still in that mode of puttering. They're not the high-octane offense we're used to seeing. And that kind of was how the end of last year went. They found ways to win games. This year, I don't think they find a way to win as many games as they did. I don't think they're getting 15 wins. Now, they could get angry after this loss, and they can come back and win 15 straight. Whatever. But I don't see it happening. So, let's go into Sunday's games and Monday night's games. So, the first game that pops up, like I mentioned, is the Raiders and the Patriots. Now, I said I thought the Patriots are going to win this game. As a fan, that's what I should say. And I had to explain this to my wife as we kind of go through, because we both went to the game on Sunday. There's hope. And what I mean by hope for the Patriots is There's hope that they're going to not be as bad as last year. There's hope in that. There's hope that it's not going to be a forever rebuild like you see with some teams. The forever rebuild is what I don't want. I can manage because I've seen them win, and I'm happy I've seen them win. There's a way to manage not rebuilding forever. It's not a guarantee. It'll never be a guarantee. But the thing is, the worst teams get the best picks. And you look at some teams like the Browns. You look at some teams like the Giants. Teams like that are constantly rebuilding. Look at the Bears. The Bears are not there. The Browns are definitely not there. The Giants are definitely not there. The Saints went through a good period, obviously winning a Super Bowl and everything else, but they've kind of been on that cusp towards the end of the last few seasons of just not being able to put it together. And yes, injuries and everything else, yes. Will injuries help this? Will injuries... Yes, if everybody was healthy all the time, yes, the teams would be better than they were. Right? Not the way the world works. But teams like the Giants, the Browns, and even the Bears, to an extent, they're constantly at the forefront of that draft. They're constantly picking the better players, allegedly, and then they're still in the same position 5 years later. That's what I don't want from the Patriots. They've had a few bad seasons. They've had a nasty breakup with Bill Belichick. Again, whatever. They've had all those different things. But I see light at the end of the tunnel for them. But they have to put it together. It's the same thing with kind of Caleb Williams in Chicago. Is Drake May that guy? Now, Drake May was 30 of 46, 287 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. He played 13 games last year. Enough time to kind of see what works, what doesn't work with him. Obviously, with the offensive line and not having anybody that can catch a ball, it makes it difficult to see what it is. The idea is to see growth. They started last year by winning over the Bengals, which was a miraculous win at that point in time. And then by the end of the year, they were complete opposite end of the spectrum down at the bottom. This year, the expectation is that they're growing, that they're towards the middle of the pack for most of the year. Losing to the Raiders with Geno Smith and Pete Carroll doesn't bother me all that much. Now, I expected them to win. I thought they did a good job with the run game. First few plays notwithstanding. But Geno Smith was able to pick them apart. 24-34 for, I think that says, 362 yards. And they gave up 9 plays of 20 yards or more. That's unacceptable from a team like this. They've made a lot of changes on the back end of that defense. Jabril Peppers actually just signed with the Steelers today. They both brought in some guys that wanted to be cut. They ended up cutting them. One of them went to the Eagles. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. Christian Gonzalez wasn't available, right? The front 7 looked okay. The front 4 looked great. Harold Landry looked great. Christian Barmore looked great. Milton Williams looked great. Those players looked really good. It's the back end, the passing game. The linebackers were lost in the middle of the field. The secondary didn't look great. We did get an interception off of a tip ball. Carlton Davis looked okay, but got beat late for a 26-yard gain on a 3rd and 20, which you should never give up as an NFL team. But I'm okay with losing the first game. As a fan, I'm okay with it. I don't think they should have lost by any stretch of the imagination. But yet here we sit on a Tuesday, and I'm talking about a Patriots loss. Weird punt at the end of the game as well, and a missed field goal from the rookie. So there are mistakes that need to be fixed. I think Geno Smith and Pete Carroll together again, they know what works with each other and stuff like that. I think they had an easier time than they should have. But I don't think there's not a lot that separates the teams, the Raiders and the Patriots. I don't think there's a lot at this point in time that separates that. So, whatever. I'm going to take it with a grain of salt and move on to week 2. Week 2 for the Arizona Cardinals and the New Orleans Saints. Sorry, week 2. Week 1 for those. Now, I mentioned how excited I was that somebody argued with me over the Cardinals and everything else like that. Now, the Cardinals won this game, but it was a lot closer than it probably should have, because we're talking about Kyler Murray going 21 of 29, 2 touchdowns, but only averaging 5.5 yards on a completion. Now, it's a lot more difficult to throw down the field. I understand that. Spencer Rattler, on the other hand, who should not be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think he's just been put in this impossible position that he's just not really ready to be in. And unfortunately, that's just the way the season's going to go for the Saints. And everybody knows my soft spot for the New Orleans Saints. But he averaged just over 4.5 yards per completion. And he had 19 incompletions. Alvin Kamara got a touchdown, 11 carries, 45 yards. Again, that's your top runner at this point. Jawan Johnson is the safety valve that caught 8 passes for the Saints. And again, they only lost by 7 points. Marvin Harrison Jr., 5 receptions, 71 yards. Trey McBride, 6 receptions, 61 yards. You know, you had James Conner run 12 times. Trey Benson run 8 times, averaged over 8.5 yards a carry. Why weren't they running the ball all that much? I think the coaching is the problem in Arizona to not have done that. Now, they could go on and win every single game, and I could look like an idiot. That is still well within the possibility of happening this season for the Arizona Cardinals. But for a team that has all that talent, to win by 7 points over a team that's probably fighting for the number 1 pick, and again, they're not going to roll over. The Saints aren't going to roll over, but boy, this game was not super exciting. And you could tell the level of talent is not at the level of some of the other teams. It just is what it is. But Arizona comes out with the win. A win's a win. We can all agree with that. And they did it on the road. So it counts for something. It just didn't look pretty. Next, we have the Miami Dolphins took on the Indianapolis Colts. And this is one of those misleading overreaction type things, I think, for both teams. I'll be fair. I think for both teams, we're going to overreact. But Daniel Jones for the Colts looked phenomenal. 22 of 29, 272 yards, almost 10 yards a catch, 1 touchdown, and he had protection. He had all of the protection that he never got in New York. So, was Daniel Jones right to get the contract in New York? They just didn't build enough around him? I don't know. But, again, this is probably overreaction, but he looked really good. When was he drafted? I mean, he's drafted in 2019. He's 28. I mean, if he continues to play even like that, again, you're looking for mistake-free football from Daniel Jones. You're not looking for him to be a top echelon quarterback, at least for Indianapolis at this point. But Tua, 14 of 23, 114 yards. He had a touchdown, but 2 interceptions. Took 3 sacks. His QBR rating was a 2.7. Devon Ancient only could run 7 times, but he averaged almost 8 yards a carry. Tyreek Hill, 4 receptions, 40 yards. Jalen Waddle, 4 receptions, 30 yards. You know, we're talking about a team that has loaded talent on an offensive end that just couldn't put anything together. Zach Wilson played in this game. That should tell you how bad it was at one point in time. I believe it was 30-0 at one point, I think. Miami Dolphins can be in a lot of trouble. High salaries, personalities, injury-prone people, and a coach that I believe has lost the locker room. Mike McDaniel's not surviving this season. You want to put something on the board and you want to say, hey, Andrew from Loftside Bantr said this, Mike McDaniel will get fired at some point in time this year or at the end of the year. It's done. Now, Miami has the Patriots coming up, so it's going to be interesting to see. I think they're not as bad as what they showed, but I don't really think they've showed that they could be much more. They'll win a few games, but boy, that Miami team looked bad. Looked really bad. And again, they were on the road, week 1. All right, there's no new system. The players that are in place have been in place for a while. Ollie Gordon's the only one, and he only ran the ball twice. Seemed to be new in that area. Nick Westbrook Ikinen, 1 reception, 7 yards. He's the secondary, which I said would be a problem for this team, was a problem. Jordan Brooks had 14 combined tackles. He's a linebacker. Tyrell Dodson. Again, your linebackers are getting all these tackles, but Micah Fitzpatrick is next after that. Jack Jones came over from, the Raiders. A little bit of a personality on him. But this Dolphins team did not look good. Doesn't mean that they can't turn it around. Again, week 1 is always overreaction. But if that's a sample of how bad they can be, and we know how bad they can be now, they're in a lot of trouble. Steelers against the Jets. The interesting storyline here being Aaron Rodgers is playing against the Jets. Justin Fields is playing against the Pittsburgh Steelers. They basically swap places. And this was a great game. The Jets looked like they were in control for a long time, only to have the Steelers come back and win. And that's the thing that separates good teams and bad teams. When you have a lead, a good team keeps it, right? When you have a bad team, you find ways to lose. So it was 19-17 at halftime. 26. Let's just put it this way. Steelers scored 17 points in the fourth quarter. Aaron Rodgers, 22 of 30, 244 yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Classic Aaron Rodgers, right? I'm still going to tell you this team doesn't scare me all that much. I think they played a team that had the ability to lose a game, and they did. And I don't know. They just don't scare me all that much. They have TJ Watt. They have Cameron Haywood, Jalen Ramsey, all these guys, Alex Highsmith, Patrick Queen. On the defense alone, DK Metcalf, Calvin Austin, Pat Fairmouth, Jalen Warren, and Aaron Rodgers, right? Caleb Johnson is their rookie that they picked up on that offensive end. I don't know. Aaron Rodgers, I think, is past it. I think we saw a great performance from him. And I think he had a chip on his shoulder. As he said after the game, I was happy to beat anybody associated with the Jets organization because they thought I was past it. I think you're past it. Doesn't mean you're not going to get a vintage game here and there. And again, I wouldn't necessarily call it a vintage game, but he played mistake-free football, threw 4 touchdowns. I mean, you can't take it away from him, and I'm not going to. But we're talking about the Jets. And the Jets, I think, are going to struggle this year. But optimism for them. Justin Fields, 16 of 22, looked good, almost 10 yards. It was throwing the ball. That was the biggest criticism from him, throwing the ball everywhere. Breece Hall looked like the Breece Hall we knew from a couple years ago, and not necessarily last year. Garrett Wilson was your leading receiver. Well, that's what he's supposed to do. It's just bad teams will find a way to lose. And that's the concerning point for the Jets. But to play as well as they did with a new quarterback that had all this criticism coming out of, great. Great. I'm glad that Justin, because I still believe in Justin Fields. He's still 26, I believe. Yeah, he's still 26 years old. Not a great system in Chicago all those years. Nobody was backing him in Pittsburgh last year. Was benched even though he had a winning record over the first couple of weeks or 4 weeks, whatever it was. For Russell Wilson, who we'll get to him because he's done. He's cooked. Actually, I believe it's the next game on here. So the Steelers are all well and good. I think they'll probably, I don't know, they just don't scare me. I can't put my finger on it. I can't. But they just, even with the star power names and stuff, it's just not a team that I look at. And they're going to play the Patriots in a few weeks, and I'm going to be at that game too. And I'm probably going to be eating those words because, it's the Patriots. But the team, if they can get better from where they just were, yes, they're a very scary team. As of right now, I don't want to overreact and say, oh my God, they look so good. Oh my God, they came back and did this. They came back. They don't scare me that much. I think everything will come back to earth at some point. Aaron Rodgers at his age, the age of the defense that they have and stuff like that. And again, they made great plays and they're all great professionals and they're all great whatever. They just don't scare me right now. A big win, but they don't scare me right now. That next game on the docket is the Giants against the Commanders. Commanders made a surprise appearance in the NFC Championship game last year. Jaden Daniels, Rookie of the Year. Guys, 19 of 30 for Jaden Daniels, a touchdown, 233 yards. Ja'Cory Merritt out of Arizona. He was a 7th-round draft pick, but they really like him. 10 carries, 82 yards, touchdown. Kept, Austin Eckler from getting hurt at some point in time this year, hopefully. Deebo Samuel, 7 receptions, 77 yards. Defense led by a bunch of great veterans. Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Javon Kinlaw came in. Marshawn Lattimore in the secondary. And then you have Russell Wilson, who is your week 2 starter. I want to put that out there now that it was announced today that he'll start in week 2. 17 of 37. So he missed 20 passes, 168 yards, 4.5 yards per completion. Russell, I'm sorry, buddy. You're done. You are done. Jackson Dart started yesterday as the 2nd-string quarterback in front of Jameis. I think you're going to see Jackson Dart a lot sooner than what people are comfortable with Jackson Dart starting. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. It could go either way, right? Russell Wilson led your team in rushing. 8 carries, 44 yards. Malik Neighbors had 5 receptions, 71 yards, and was seen yelling at Brian Daboll on the sideline. I think he's done with Russell Wilson as the experiment, right? He's done with that. Malik Neighbors is in a terrible situation, and he's playing this well, getting 14 yards of reception with literal shit throwing him the ball. And I don't mean that as Russell Wilson's a bad guy. Look, he's had a great career. Excuse me. But he's at a point in his time where he's not that anymore. I don't think I'm saying anything that's controversial. I don't think I'm saying anything that's terrible other than saying he's probably literal shit, but that's besides the point. If Brian Daboll can get somebody in there, whether it's Jackson, Dart, Jameis Wilson is probably not the guy, but he's going to be at least fun to watch. He might save his job, but we're in tough shape here for the New York Football Giants. Half a sack for Abdul Carter, which is his first game. I don't know. The Giants are one of those teams that are going to be at the top 5 pick again, I think. Carolina Panthers and Jacksonville Jaguars were next on the docket. Carolina Panthers, 2 interceptions by Bryce Young. Again, looked good at the end of last year. Didn't seem all that great now. 18 of 35, 154 yards. QBR of 20. Not great. Chuba Hubbard, 16 carries, 57 yards. Tet McMillan was your leading receiver, which is a good thing if you're looking at the skill position they drafted in the first round. Bryce Young also lost the fumble. Other side, Trevor Lawrence, 19 of 31, 178 yards. Not blowing anybody away by any means. Travis Etienne, 16 carries, 149 yards. Almost 9 yards a carry. Look great. Receiving, again, nobody really out there. Travis Hunter, 6 receptions, 33 yards. Targeted 8 times. All right, they tried to get him the ball. 1 reception for Brian Thomas, who was your leading receiver last year. So, again, spread out a little bit from some of these guys. Brenton Strange was your leading receiver yards-wise. The defense looked all right, but a pretty slow second half for both teams. So, I don't think Jacksonville by any means has turned the corner, but a win over a team that was looking really good last year now seems to have reverted a little bit. We'll see what happens with that the rest of the year for the Panthers. But Jacksonville, I think, still has some steps to make before anything. But they get the win at home against the Panthers. The Bengals and the Browns are next. This was a lot closer than I thought it would be. The Bengals end up winning on the road 17-16 over the Browns. Joe Flacco, 31 of 45, 290 yards, touchdown, 2 interceptions. I mean, if Joe Flacco at his age, let me see, he's 40 years old at this point, is throwing the ball 45 times, you're in a lot of trouble. You are in a lot of trouble. And this is where we're going to kind of go back and forth and look at this and say, hey, Shador is going to end up being in here one of these times. Joe Burrow only threw the ball 23 times, 113 yards, 4.9 yards per reception, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Doesn't blow you away, right? Does not blow you away. Chase Brown, 21 carries, 43 yards. Doesn't blow you away. Offense couldn't move the ball. With all that talent, they couldn't move the ball. The good thing for the Bengals is the defense held and got you something out of it. Demetrius Knight, one of their draft picks, I believe he's second round pick. Yeah, second round pick this year out of South Carolina. 8 solo tackles, 10 total tackles. I liked him. I heard a lot of negative for him coming out in the second round or being drafted in the second round. I thought he looked really good, and I'm glad that he's gotten a good game under his belt as a leading tackler. Or no, he wasn't the leading tackler, but I believe he had the most solo tackles. Cleveland defense, again, did their job. 17 points from the Bengals' high-octane offense. You should win that game. But their offense can't move the ball. Cedric Tillman had a touchdown, sneaky pickup in the fantasy team for me towards the end of the week. Bengals, I believe, will be better than this. Browns, I think this is probably what we can expect from them. They're going to lose close games. Next, Tampa Bay on the road against the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Penix Jr. gets the chance to start. 27 of 42, 298 yards and a touchdown. Looked pretty good, right? Algier and Bijan Robinson both only ran for 24 yards each. Not great. Bijan, however, had 6 receptions for 100 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Pitts had 7 receptions. Drake London, 8 receptions. So the guys that are supposed to be getting the catches are getting the catches. Probably a little bit more check down than anything else. But Atlanta loses at home 23-20. Baker Mayfield, 17 of 32. Not a great look, but he had 3 touchdowns. But he looked great in the 2-minute offense. If the Buccaneers could just run a 2-minute offense all the time, I think he'd be great. For some reason, he just wasn't great the rest of the time. He was missing a lot of targets. He had the most rushing yards on the team. So again, rushing was a trouble for a lot of teams. Was a trouble. I don't think that's a proper sentence in any way, shape, or form. Running the ball seemed like a problem for a lot of teams this first week. And again, overreaction for week 1. That's what this is. Emeka Ibuka, 4 receptions, 67 yards, 2 touchdowns. So again, great draft pick, it seems, right off the bat. And the defense held when they needed to. So I think the Buccaneers probably still come out of this weak division. The Atlanta Falcons could have had a huge step in making that their division if this win week 1. Didn't happen, obviously. But closer game than I expected. I think the Buccaneers are not as bad as this. I think the Atlanta Falcons are probably going to keep going up from here. I think Michael Penix might be that guy. I mean, he needs more time, obviously, but they got an expensive backup in Kirk Cousins. So I mean, they could be in worse shape. Michael Penix obviously has injury issues, but going on to the next game, the 49ers on the road beat the Seahawks 17-13. Brock Purdy 26 of 35, 277 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's a little banged up. George Kittle's out for a few weeks. He just was placed on IR. McCaffrey, 22 carries for 69 yards. Ricky Pearsall, 4 receptions, 108 yards. He was shot last year. We all remember that, right? He was shot last year. And here he is, over 100 yards receiving game 1. Sam Darnold, 16 of 23, 150 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Typical Sam Darnold game that we're used to. Not his time with the Vikings. Kevin O'Connell for the Vikings, and we'll get into that to the Monday night game, but Kevin O'Connell was like an amazing head coach. He just doesn't have the pieces to get them that extra step. But quarterbacks-wise, they've all looked great. All the quarterbacks that he's had to deal with look good. So is he really a quarterback whisperer? Like, I understand that he was one, but, he spent time in New England. Why didn't New England give him a call for the new head coach? They wanted Vrabel. I understand that, and I still believe in Vrabel. But Kevin O'Connell has looked really good with quarterbacks. Really good. I've gotten off topic because this is the 49ers and the Seahawks. 49ers and the Seahawks. I think that the Seahawks are probably going to have a little bit more trouble than people think. I don't think Sam Darnold has really changed all that much, especially where he's not in a Kevin O'Connell situation. And he has Mike McDonald as his head coach, which is a defensive specialist. And again, defensive specialist against Brock Purdy and they don't have all their weapons, but good weapons. Help them 17 points. I mean, you can't really fault that. Again, at 17 points for the 49ers, with Sam Darnold being what you think he's going to be, you should win this game. Another closer game than I thought it would be was the Denver Broncos at home winning 20-12 over the Titans. This was Cam Ward's first game starting, obviously first overall pick, 12 of 28, 112 yards. Going to have some growing pains. Tony Pollard, 18 carries, 60 yards. Receiving wise, Calvin Ridley had 4 receptions. Gunnar Helm, one of their rookies. Alec Aromanor, another rookie, couple of receptions. Tyler Lockett didn't have anything. Probably passed it as well. Bo Nix, 25 of 40, 176 yards, touchdown, 2 interceptions. Now, I claimed at the beginning of this year that Bo Nix may go through a sophomore slump. And he looked like he was having that trouble in this game. I think he's probably going to be in that sophomore slump. I think he's going to have okay games. So he won't be bad. He'll be kind of like C.J. Stroud in that he's doing enough to win against bad teams, but he's going to make some mistakes. People have film on him People have all this stuff now, and I see too many little things in his game that I think he's going to make more mistakes than what people are projecting. Doesn't mean he won't have a good year, but he won't have the year that most people think. So Bo Nix, quite a few mistakes. RJ Harvey, 6 carries, 70 yards. He said he was a sneaky fantasy football pick. J.K. Dobbins got the start, 16 carries, 63 yards, has a touchdown. Cortland Sutton, Troy Franklin, Evan Ingram, your top 3 receivers for that Denver Broncos team. A win's a win, as I said, and the first week, there's probably more mistakes than what a lot of people are looking at, but Broncos get the win. It's just keep an eye on Bo Nix. Packers 27-13 win over the Lions at home, and the Lions have looked like a dropped-off team since they lost in the playoffs last year. I mean, Jared Goff, 31 of 39, can't ask for really any more than that, but was only getting about 5.5 yards per reception, 225 yards total. Was sacked 4 times. David Montgomery, Jamar Gibbs couldn't get anything going on the ground. This Packers defense looks stout. Edgerrin Cooper, 12 tackles. Rashawn Gary, a sack and a half. Lucas Van Ness, a half sack. Devontae Wyatt, a sack. Micah Parsons, a sack. So, you're looking at this team and who they're trotting out there on the defensive end, and there's a lot of big names there. A lot of big names. Jordan Love, 16 of 22, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns. Didn't have to throw the ball a ton. Josh Jacobs, 19 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown. Spread the ball around really well. Jaden Reed, 3 receptions, 45 yards, a touchdown. Romeo Dobbs, 2 receptions, 68 yards. Tucker Kraft, 2 receptions, touchdown. Josh Jacobs, Deontay Von Wicks. I'm going to go with that. 2 receptions. So, nobody had more than 3 receptions. 2, a couple of ones here and there. I mean, he spread the ball around great. Defense played great. Packers I think they've taken over this division already week 1. The Lions have to clean it up. These are not, all new coordinators, a lot of new players, and everything else like that. Jared Goff did what he was supposed to do. It's just a lot of changes for the Lions. And the Packers made some great improvements. Great improvements. I realize I've passed some games and I have some facts stored in here, in this part of my brain, that I'll bring up at the end. Involves both New York teams. They're pretty interesting stats. The Rams, at home, 14-9 winners over the Texans. C.J. Stroud. He's one of the guys that went through a sophomore slump, and I've looked at him and I said, can he come out the other side? If he can come out the other side, the team will be okay. Week 1, he didn't come out the other side. 19 of 27, 188 yards, interception. Run game didn't do him a ton of favors. Nick Chubb, 13 carries, 60 yards. Okay, fine. Jaden Higgins, leading receiver yards-wise with 32, one of their Iowa State draft picks. Cade Stover, 4 receptions. He was a leading receiver. A couple of fumbles. Not an exciting game. Matthew Stafford, 21 of 29, 245 yards. For a guy that didn't practice really all the offseason, that's decent. If he can get stronger, which it's hard to get stronger throughout an NFL season when you're a quarterback because you're going to be hit so many times. But Puka Nacua, 10 receptions, 130 yards. That's your guy. 11 receptions spread out between the rest of the team. Puka had 10 of them. Texans are going to be in some trouble too if they don't figure it out. And I don't know if it's a CJ Stroud problem or if it's a problem as a whole. I like D'Amico Ryans. I love him as a head coach. I loved him as a player. But boy, do they look rough. Game 1 looked rough. The game of the week, Bills at home 41-40 over the Baltimore Ravens. This was your Sunday night football game. Lamar Jackson 14-19, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ran the ball for 70 yards and a touchdown. Derrick Henry had 18 carries, 169 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Zay Flowers, 7 receptions, 143 yards, a touchdown. DeAndre Hopkins had a fantastic catch for one of his 2 receptions, 35 yards, and a touchdown. Baltimore should have won this game. All the things I just threw at you, all the numbers I just threw at you, normally means a win for the Baltimore Ravens. But they did not win. They gave up 16 points in the straight points, 22 in the fourth quarter alone. I don't know if it was just being tired or what. But Josh Allen, 33 of 46, 394 yards, 2 touchdowns. MVP performance. James Cook, 13 carries, 44 yards, touchdown. Josh Allen, 14 carries, 30 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, Keon Coleman, 8 receptions, 112 yards, touchdown. These are all the players you need to make those plays. And they did. They made the plays when they need to. And again, that's what good teams will do. And I'm not saying Baltimore's a bad team. But good teams like the Bills will win close games because they know how to do it. The Ravens have always kind of proved in these close games that they're not quite there. And does that mean that this year is going to be any different? I don't know. It's week 1. Again, overreaction, right? But this is what you want to see from a team from the Buffalo Bills. This is not what you want to see from a Baltimore Ravens team. To give up a late lead like that. There's no doubt in my mind Baltimore is going to make the playoffs, and there's no doubt in my mind that these two are probably going to meet in the playoffs. So, big win for the Bills. Gives them a leg up in the AFC to be the number 1 seed because I don't think the Chiefs are going to get it this year. Baltimore now has some work to do to get there. And again, next week everything could change. Monday Night Football. Vikings on the road. 27-24 win over the Bears. Not what Bears fans wanted to see. The Bears were up 10-6 at halftime. Were up 17-6 at one point. But up 21 points in the fourth quarter. Because they didn't let up anything in the third quarter, and it looked like they were going to cruise. But J.J. McCarthy, 13 of 20, 143 yards. Not a great stat line. 2 touchdowns and interception. Okay. The year that he spent injured, I think, was probably the biggest benefit to him. I do. I just think the biggest benefit was him sitting out all of last year. Got some extra film study, got all this and stuff. I thought he was a reach, or where they drafted him, I believe he was 10th. Yeah, he was a 10th overall pick. I thought he was a reach. But he would make a mistake or make a bad play, or they'd get off the field and he'd come back poised. And I think sitting there and understanding all this stuff for a year, understood that. Caleb Williams, I mean, there's been news stories coming out left and right about how dysfunctional the Bears were last year. And, I mean, it's not any different from what the Patriots were last year or anything, or any bad team or dysfunction. But they had the number 1 overall pick in Caleb Williams, and he didn't look great last year. No offensive line. Completely get it. Offensive line looked pretty good to start off this year. You know, giving away a game, not being able to get the right things going at the right times is a sign of a bad team. They'll find a way to lose. And I'll say this all throughout this year for teams that find a way to lose. The Bears have always been a team that found a way to lose. And this doesn't speak any better to that. So Bears fans are going to be upset. And I don't doubt it. Again, this is kind of one of those overreactions. Caleb Williams looked a little better than he did last year. All right. Can he keep building? That's what has to happen. I mean, Justin Jefferson didn't blow you away. Aaron Jones was your leading receiver, or actually was tied, 44 yards each. Both had a touchdown. On the Bears side, DJ Moore, 3 receptions, 68 yards. Roman Dunze had 6 receptions, 37 yards, and a touchdown. Caleb Williams was your leading rusher. The team looks like they've invested in the right areas. Can they close out games? Is the defense a problem now? That is week 1 in a nutshell. Right? Week 1 in a nutshell. Your Thursday night game is the Commanders and Green Bay. Now, I think this is a sneaky preview of an NFC championship game, or at least a NFC playoff game. So, both 1-0, 8:15 Eastern, Thursday night. Then I believe there's 2 Monday Night Football games this week. Yes, there's 2 Monday Night Football games, one at 7 o'clock, coming up, Tampa Bay and Houston, and then the Raiders and the Chargers. There'll be the 2 games on like the special nights, and then everything else happens on Sunday. We all know that. Now, the 2 statistics that I heard coming out of this week that were both from New York teams. One being, this was the first time the New York Jets didn't punt in the first half since 1991. I'm going to let that sink in for a second, because I heard it on another podcast. They had to look it up to make sure. But it is the first time the New York Jets have not punted in the first half since 1991. That's a long time. And again, it's not something that's like super uncommon or super it's pretty regular to see a team, it's on a first drive or second drive or start of a second quarter or whatever, punt the ball away. But to not have done it for, what is that, 36 years? 34 years? 34 years. I'll get my math correctly eventually. 34 years. It's kind of amazing. And then a stat for the Giants that is not a good one. Not a good one. At least the Jets, you can say, it was a positive. The Giants, for 3 straight years, have failed to score more than, I think it was 6 points, or it's definitely less than 10. So we'll just say it that way. The Giants, for 3 straight years, have failed to score more than 10 points. Brian Daboll's an offensive guy, right? Doesn't bode well for the Daniel Jones time in New York. Doesn't bode well for Brian Daboll as a whole to save his job. And it definitely doesn't bode well for you going, hey, Russell Wilson's going to be the guy for week 2. I would just bench him. If you want to throw somebody out there to take knocks and keep coming out and being basically just a gunslinger, that's Jameis Winston all day long. Right? Throw him out for a couple weeks. Jackson Dart's going to be starting. But before week 10 in New York for the Giants. You got to see what you got. You got to see if you traded up for the right guy. You got to see if he's developed all this stuff. You look good in the preseason, yada, 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 yada. All that stuff. All the same stuff that bad teams talk about because they can't talk about winning. So, that's all that. That's your NFL, kind of everything else. There's a couple of different things that have happened in sports over the last. One thing is Kellen DeBoer is in a lot of trouble at Alabama. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I don't think that he survives this year. I can't give you the reason why he's not been a successful, at least in the eyes of the Alabama faithful, head coach. I'm starting to think that they're going to fire him way too soon. And now I'm starting to feel like it's not soon enough. Pac-12 guy, Pac-10 guy, whatever you want to say, comes over from the West Coast, is now coaching in the SEC, and then the SEC is in trouble in itself because of transfer portal. You want to go get all these high-end, top talent guys to Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, whatever teams want to go and have the number one recruiting class, right? Hey, we're Alabama. We need to have the number one recruiting class. We were going to get the best players. If they don't play, they're going to leave. And they're going to make money to leave. Right? That is what is going to happen in college football for all these big teams, especially if it's a coach that you don't necessarily agree with or is a coach that's not proving his worth. They're going to leave and they're going to get paid to do so. All your backups, all the guys that are supposed to be the next man up are going to leave. So, I think Alabama's in a little bit of trouble. Again, they could run the table from here. I don't know. But they didn't look against Florida State, and Florida State has Tommy Castellanos, who I watch as a Boston College quarterback, and he was not very good. Now, he beat Florida State last year, and that's it's a vicious cycle, right? My team, Boston College, played Michigan State, lost in double overtime, 42 to 40. 42 to 20 would not have made any sense, just so we're clear. 42 to 40. Dylan Lonergan, the transfer from Alabama, looked great. I'm okay with a 2-point loss on the road to a tough team in Michigan State. They played really well. Both teams played really well. But again, I'm okay with that. But Boston College, I think, has a quarterback on their hands. My worry is that he's going to play so well that he's going to go back to a big school comparative to Boston College. But that's Bill O'Brien's problem. As I mentioned, George Kittle is on injured reserve with a hamstring injury. They have also waived their kicker, Jake Moody, who missed a 27-yard field goal and had a 36-yard field goal blocked. A Dolphins star, Tyreek Hill, has been accused of domestic violence by his estranged wife, which only compounds the problems that the Miami Dolphins have. This is not going to be something that is going to just disappear for him. And again, he has the capability of having big games, but he's in a bit of hot water as it is anyway. Again, that's all well and good. Colorado ended up playing their third-string quarterback, Ryan Staub, who is now expected to start against Houston. So that's a little bit different there in Colorado for Coach Primetime. And from there, as I mentioned, the Steelers signed Jabril Peppers in the wake of Deshaun Elliott getting hurt. So injuries have already popped up. There's already guys available. Of course, they're all expatriates. I loved having football back. I loved being able to go to the game. Even though it was rainy in Foxborough, and even though the Patriots didn't win, it's good to have that back. It's good to see NFL players. And again, my concern with the product is all of the lack of development. And I think we've seen that probably a little bit more recently in the fact that because there's less practices, because there's less time to do this, because the CBA says this, and blah, 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 there's less time for players to develop. Quarterbacks are going to have to develop their own way or develop over a longer period of time. Is that what's going to happen with Caleb Williams? Is that what's going to happen with Drake May? I don't know. But it just seems like these guys that are normally top of the draft guys that you can throw in there and they're just ready to go, either A, they're not spending enough time in school, they're moving around too much in college, or they're not getting the time to do all these things. So it's interesting to see. It's interesting to watch because from here, it has to be step forward, 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 forward. You can't keep reverting. Yes, you can have bad games, but there has to be steps forward. I don't think Drake May played bad this Sunday. I don't think Caleb Williams played bad. They played okay. Not good enough to win, obviously. That's what I'm paying attention to now in the sport of football, is who's developing. Because with less time to do so, you're going to start seeing product like last year's Patriots, like you've seen from Daniel Jones over the last few years before he came out and decided to have just a great game. That is what the NFL is going to look like. So, where is that development coming? Have we cut back too much? I believe we have. That's just me. But I thank you all for listening in again. This is the Week 1 recap of the NFL season. The next show will be out on Saturday at some point in time, where we can preview Week 2, look at some of the other stuff that's happened over the past week, and go from there. So, thank you very much for taking a listen. Please check out loftsidebanter.com. That's loftsideBantr.com. And let me know what you think. Leave comments on the YouTube videos and everything else like that. I really appreciate it. Follow, all that fun stuff. Have you right around an hour? Perfect. Perfect Week 1 from me. I'm 1-0. All right, guys. See you later.